Today we will be learning about dividing fractions, but before we can get to dividing fractions, we have to talk about finding the reciprocal. So, to find the reciprocal, it's the inverse of a fraction, and you get the reciprocal by flipping the fraction over. So, what that means is you're going to take the original fraction, and all you're going to do is you're going to flip it upside down, and you're going to get the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of 1/9 is 9/1. So let's talk about some other types of fractions and how we find the reciprocals for those. So if it's just a fraction, like I just said, you're just going to flip it over. So instead of 2/5, it's going to become 5/2. Now where it gets a little bit tricky is where we have a mixed number and then where we just have a regular whole number. If we have a mixed number, you first have to turn it improper, and you have to use that magic C. Multiply at the bottom, add at the top. 4 times 3 is 12 plus 1 more gives you 13/4. Then I find the reciprocal now that I have it improper. So the reciprocal of 13/4 will be 4/13. If it's a whole number, you make sure you put that denominator of 1 because you have to turn it into a fraction first before you can do the reciprocal. So 7/1 becomes 1/7 as the reciprocal. So what I want you to do is I want you to pause. I want you to do numbers 1 through 9 by yourself. If you need help, let your teacher know. When you're ready to check, unpause the video and I'll have all the answers for you. And here are all your answers for numbers 1 through 9. Be careful with 4, 5, 7, and 8. Make sure you turn those improper first before you did the reciprocal. And then for number 6 and number 9, make sure you put those whole numbers over 1 before you took the reciprocal. So let's talk about now how to divide fractions. And when we divide fractions, it's going to be the same thing like we do for multiplication, because multiply or divide, we always work side to side. So the first rule, just like when we were multiplying fractions, is we have to get rid of those mixed numbers. So if we look at this example that's here, 3/4 divided by 1 1/3, we have to get rid of this mixed number that's right here. So we're going to turn it improper, multiply at the bottom and add at the top. So 3 times 1 would be 3 plus 1 more gives me 4. So I have now 3/4 divided by 4/3. Now, when you start dividing fractions, we start cutting things into pieces, and then we start cutting pieces into pieces, and it gets really complicated. So when we divide fractions, the rule that we use is we're allowed to turn division into multiplication to make it a little bit easier, but we have to find the reciprocal while we're doing that. So we need to keep the first fraction the same. We're going to switch the sign to multiplication, and then we're going to flip and find that reciprocal. So if we move down here, we'll keep the first fraction the same, switch the division sign to a multiplication sign, and then we'll find the reciprocal of that last number. Then we just multiply side to side. Now, if you like to do this that cross simplification, this is the step here where you can do that cross simplification if you liked that part of the video from last time. But if you didn't, just keep it the same. 3 times 3 would be 9, 4 times 4 is 16, and then simplify if you can. Now this problem does not simplify, so 9/16 would just be the answer. So let's talk about some of these together. So if we look at number 1, for number 1, we have a division problem. I'm not allowed to divide, but I can multiply. And I don't have any mixed numbers to worry about, so I'm going to keep the first fraction the same, switch the division to multiplication, and flip the second fraction over. And I recommend, until you get used to it, write your keep, switch, flip underneath your fractions. So we're going to keep the first one the same, switch from division to multiplication, and then we're going to flip over that second fraction and find the reciprocal, and the reciprocal of 2/7 is 7/2. Now, like I said before, if you like that cross simplification, you could do that here, but if not, just multiply like normal. 4 times 7 is 28, 7 times 2 is 14. Now I can see that there's 7s here on the diagonal, and if you were cross simplifying, you saw that. That means I can divide this whole thing by 7. 28 divided by 7 would be 4. 14 divided by 7 would be 2. And then I can divide 4 divided by 2, because this can simplify by 2 again. And I end up just getting 2 as my final answer. Okay, if we look at number 2, we have this lonely whole number of 4. We need to make it a fraction first. I don't have any mixed numbers, so I can't divide. I'm going to do keep, switch, and flip to change it to multiplication so it's easier. Keep the first fraction the same, 3/5. Switch to multiplication. Flip the second fraction over so it becomes 1/4. Find that reciprocal, so I'm allowed to do that multiplication. 3 times 1 is 3. 5 times 4 is 20. Doesn't end in 5 or 0, both of them. Are not both even. Does not end in 0. Are not doubles. Evil 3 does not work, so 3/20 is your answer. Now number 3 is a little bit more complicated. I have 2 mixed numbers that are there. So a lot of you are going to try to shortcut this. Don't shortcut it. Write out all your work. Turn them in proper first. And keep that division symbol for right now. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 plus 3 is 11 over 4. 3 times 5 is 15, plus 2 more is 17 over 3. Now I have improper fractions being divided. I cannot divide fractions. I need to multiply to make it easier. Keep, switch, flip. Keep the first fraction the same. Switch to multiply. Flip the second fraction over. Multiply across the top, multiply across the bottom. 11 times 3 is 33. 4 times 17, and if you don't know that one, oops. Write it out. 4 times 7, 28. 4 times 1 is 4. 5, 6, so 68. And doesn't end in 5 or 0, does not end in zeros, doesn't divide by 2, and does not divide by evil 3. So it's done. So what I want you to do is I want you to start by trying number 1, and I want you to try that keep, switch, flip. So pause the video, just try number 1. So if we look at number 1, we have the keep, the switch, the flip, no whole numbers to get rid of, 5/8, switch to multiply to make it easier, and then 4/3 to flip it over. Multiply across the top, multiply across the bottom. Remember, if you like to do that cross simplification, do that before you multiply. 5 times 4 is 20. 8 times 3 is 24. This one can divide by 4 or by 2 twice. 4 is like the big brother of 2. 20 divided by 4 is 5. 24 divided by 4 is 6. And then we're done. Okay, I want you to pause. I want you to try number 3. So for number 3, remember you have to do that magic C first and whole numbers over 1. 5 times 2 is 10 plus 4 is 14 over 5. Keep a division for right now. Now I'm not allowed to divide fractions. Now I do keep, switch, flip. Don't do it all in one step. That's where our students mess up. 14 over 5 times 1 over 3. Multiply. 14 times 1 is 14. 5 times 3 is 15. Doesn't end in 5 or 0 both. Doesn't divide by 2. Doesn't divide by 3. Doesn't end in zeros. No doubles. Done. Okay, I want you to try number 4 by yourself. So double magic C for this one. Keep a division before you do anything else. So it's 21 over 5 divided by 15 over 6. Now do keep, switch, flip for that division. So it's 21 over 5 multiplied by 6 over 15. If you like to do that cross simplification, here's that spot. If not, just multiply. Make sure you were careful. So you got 126 over 75. Those can both divide by 3. So make sure you're careful. And you get 42 over 25. And you can leave them improper. Same thing with how we did for multiplication. Now the last one I want to talk about is number 2. It says this picture represents 5 pizzas. Exactly how many 1/4 are in 5? So it's like you're taking 5 and dividing it into groups of 1/4. So you could do the math. 5 over 1, and then you do keep, switch, flip. So it becomes 1/5 times 1/4. Oops. I'm sorry, I just did that backwards. 5 over 1 times 4 over 1 equals 20 over 1, which is really just 20. So you'll end up getting 20 pieces. But why do we get 20 pieces? Well, these are groups of, this is 5 pizzas, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we want groups of 1 of the fourths. They're broken into fourths. So we circle groups of 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. We circled groups of 1 of the fourths, and we end up getting 20. So mathematically, you can see here why it's 20, and you can also see in a picture representation why it's 20.